Well, Jules, you want to give us a little intro on the topic, or you just want us to get rolling here?
Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks to everybody for who's joining us. I'm so excited about this topic. I think that it is more than timely, and there's so much content here. So I'm very excited to have Julia Smith from GES joining us and Rich Stone from ExpoCad, two very much experts in our industry to talk about some of this information. So thank you guys, and thank you to everybody for attending. And with that, I'm going to step back and let you guys cover it.
Great.
Thanks, Jules.
Thanks, Julie.
Yeah, so Rich, really great to be here with the expert of all experts of floor plans. And I would say that, you know, the good news is we're after a long, dark, hard year. We're all feeling a lot more optimistic that some events are going to happen, you know, in the coming months. And certainly the third and fourth quarters are starting to look very positive, but at the same time that creates some challenges, right, Rich? Because we're all having to, you know, I would say I'm, you know, spending a lot of time with my crystal ball, trying
that's it.
trying to look into it, and you know, if that doesn't work, I'm getting out the magic 8-ball.
Does yours still work? Mine, I broke mine. I'm sure it's finally just gave up.
Yeah,
good.
Yeah, so certainly the conversation about floor plans has changed a lot because we're really needing to look at them very freshly. And one of the things that I'm having a lot of conversations with my clients about is what sort of data they have gathered relating to what their attendees are looking for to feel safe on the show floor, certainly talking to their exhibitors about their intentions, you know, reaching out to all the bellwether exhibitors and, you know, are you planning to participate and in what capacity? And, you know, will there be downsizing? Will there be attrition, et cetera? But in the meantime, Rich, I know in the last year, I guess, you know, one of the positive things about having a very unusual pause in the business is that we have a chance to look at some things fresh and develop some new things, right? So do you want to talk a little bit about some of what ExpoCad has been doing to support the contractors in the industry in the last year?
Well, thanks, Julie, for that. Yes, absolutely. We have been paying attention to what's going on globally. And of course, there's definitely input. And what we have done is that we had several global summits that coalesced experts, including your Lana, who heads up your floor planning department, and many others that have contributed their opinions and ideas and the concerns of their customers. So the show organizers of the world on what should be done. What are we going to do? How is this going to look? And so most every general service contractor in North America, many overseas now are using what's known as our ExpoCad contractor product for doing these layouts. And we have made significant additions to the software and added on new feature sets that reflect the concerns of our collective audience, the show organizers, and what they think they need to make their attendees and exhibitors comfortable. And those, you know, include many things, and one of those that are near and dear to our heart is the one-way aisle things. But certainly the social distancing, locations of sanitized stations, and all this, the queue setups for registration, and those kinds of things. We built automated tools to help that be consistent, make it easier and smoother for iterations of floor plans. As one of the things that we're saying internally is that this is the year of flux and change. I think you had something clever for that. What did you have?
Well, my advice to everybody is that everything that you are sending out to exhibitors right now should have, you know, asterisk subject to change. Right?
There you go.
I think quite seriously, anything that we are putting out to exhibitors, whether it's their version of the floor plan, whether it's rules in the service kit, whether it's health and safety guidelines, we know have a real possibility for changing, and we hope for the better. We hope that some of them will ease up over the course. Certainly it's looking like with vaccine distribution and cases going down, that things will look better as we get further along in the year. But we don't know exactly what that means. And certainly, Rich, I think, one of the things that you certainly help us deal with is, there's so many venues, so many rules right now out there, so many different sets of guidelines, and they're in flux. And some of them haven't even been set yet. I mean, here we are in California still waiting for our guidance. We're hoping to get some sort of guidance, about getting back to work in the next couple of weeks. But it's a very fluid scenario right now. And I think that's part of the real challenge for our show organizer partners, is trying to figure out what level of risk they're willing to take. And at what point am I comfortable that this is the floor plan that I can go forward with? I can sell space. How much flexibility do I have to build into it so that if I have to, retrench in some ways, so that I've a way to expand, so that unfortunately, if I have to downsize some, that I can do that without it being terrifically disruptive to every exhibitor. And I think that's probably where, a certain amount of faith and a certain amount of experience and a certain amount of the, the crystal ball that we were talking about comes in, because, every day I have conversations with clients that, ask, well, what do you think will be approved in 6 months? I
Yep.
I can't really answer that, right? I can give really good suggestions, and I think that's the situation we all are in as partners. And if there's one thing that I think has been a real positive that has come out of all this, is the very high level of collaboration that is going on between facilities and all of suppliers and contractors, between all the industry organizations, because we're all trying desperately to row this boat in one direction, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even when we look at, Go Live Together and other types of efforts, that basically includes everyone to, lobby the powers that be towards recognizing the contribution that exhibitions bring, right? So that's certainly, it's good to see that we are going in one direction and heading that way. And I think, one of the things that's extremely important, and what we're seeing with those who have been successful in doing events. Now, we've been working with organizers that literally have been doing events completely throughout COVID. So that would be overseas and here in the States, by the way. We've been working with those who are doing that. And one of the things that was clear with that is really twofold. Number one is communicate. I mean, the communication is critical to your attendees and your exhibitors and the general service contractors and contractors that are on this call today. It is all about communication. How much can you say and how much can you do? The other part of it, what we have seen this is a really interesting part. And one of the things that I know that is still being addressed is that there is no cohesive or federal level umbrella that is saying these are the rules. So we're getting every jurisdiction is a completely different set of rules and mindsets and who is involved. So one of those is from you've got your GBAC rated venue, and then you've got a fire marshal, and the next thing you know, you've got the health department involved. And in some cases, we've actually seen the city managers involved in one way or another.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of confusion about who owns what set of rules. And certainly one of the questions I get every day is who's responsible for enforcing those rules. And, Rich, I know one of the things that we've talked about a little bit is the software that contractors work with obviously has some layers the software that show organizers work with typically don't. So we have insight into some things that can really cost money when there are changes that are made or create other problems. Certainly, we're all going to be working with smaller budgets over at least the next cycle of shows. And, there are some venues, there are some of the health organizations, the health departments or whatever that are giving some very specific rules. And we have to be really careful about how we apply those to floor plans. Isn't that right, Rich? Because it can really create some challenges.
Absolutely, there's no doubt. Those layouts are going to be critical for many reasons, as you've mentioned. How many, what attendees are going to look like. I had a conversation with a fairly large exhibitor in the medical industry, and their conversation with me was, well, we normally have a 30-30 at this event, but we're going to do a 10-by-20. So those are things that the organizers and of course everyone's going to be dealing with in regards to those types of changes. One of the organizers we worked with, what they ended up doing, they're a multi-show organizer. They've been doing shows throughout the COVID time period, is that they found that when they were prepared as an organizer, they could walk into a city and a venue with their documentation of, this is what we are going to do. Here is the list of protections we're going to do during setup. This is what we're going to do, for our exhibitors, and looking at floor loadings and occupancy, not loadings in terms of weight, but in terms of numbers of individuals on the floor, and they were able to literally drive that decision making because of their preparedness. And it was a collaboration between their general service contractor, their venue, and themselves to come in and say, okay, guys, this is what we've got. And it has made a world of difference for them. And they've been able to get the job done, get approval for these events. So yeah, absolutely. It makes a difference.
I think that's a real key takeaway, Rich, because I think everybody's feeling their way through this right now, and they're trying to figure out the best way, again, not only to make your attendees and your exhibitors and your speakers and your workers and everybody comfortable that they are safe, but also make the parties that have to approve this process feel that they are not taking any risks in approving it, right? So if you come to the table, like you say, with a good safety protocol process in place, and what you're going to own and how you're going to see it through from beginning to end, you're going to have a much better opportunity of getting your floor plan approved, not having any unexpected issues at show site, et cetera. So I think that's really, really key. I think that, one of the things that I want to remind everyone too, and I know we certainly have a lot of contractors on this call, but in some cases, the first thing that comes to mind is, well, let's widen the aisle, or let's widen some of the aisles, right? Because there are a lot of different ways, and maybe I should back up and say that, while some facilities right now are giving some real specifics about how they want layouts done, it's a lot more common, and in my belief, it's going to become a lot more common as we get closer to the late summer and fall, that we're going to be looking at density formulas. And, as more people get vaccinated, perhaps those density formulas will loosen up some. But in the meantime, there are a lot of different ways to get to those density formulas, right? I mean, it's,
yes,
you might have fewer booths on the floor because of attrition. You might have fewer people on the floor because, there's obviously going to be some natural attrition the first year. You might be in more space, you might widen your aisles, you might, take some of your features off the show floor. There are a lot of different ways to get there, right, Rich?
Absolutely, and it can get a little crazy as well. We have seen organizers that are multi-hall shows where the health department took the density levels to heart by hall. So the organizer literally were counting the attendees in and out by hall, so that at any time, if the health department stopped in, they said, well, we have 1,000 people, we're under by 100 in this hall and this hall. So it can get really, really intense. So yeah, there's preparedness that needs to be available for at the contractor level and at the show organizer level, to be able to be prepared for certain types of asks from the authorities in regards to safety and how it's going to be handled. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, there definitely needs to be clarity around who's included in those density numbers as well. I think I read a blog that PCMA shared this week that talked about how sometimes the density formula does include workers, sometimes it does not. So for instance, if they believe that if the idea is that the facility workers, for instance, need to be there for a safe experience, they're perhaps not included in that. But if there are workers on the show floor, are they included? And so there's a need to get clarity around that if you're working with a density number, right, Rich?
Yeah, we've even heard some chatter, and it's just recently, it could have even been Julie, I don't know, that there are some venues that are willing not to count those who are vaccinated, I believe I've heard. So that, if they have been vaccinated, those won't be included in the count. I thought that was really interesting. And that certainly then becomes ammunition, for lack of a better term, for being able to increase the numbers on the show floor. And certainly it can be suggested to those authorities and health authorities and building and fire marshal, that very thing you might be able to throw in to be able to get more folks on your show floor because they have been immunized.
Well, there are also other ways to get more people on, right? I mean, you can have appointment-based attendance. You can, if you're a consumer show, you can sell X amount of tickets in a particular time block, for instance. You can assign attendees blocks of times to be in the exhibit area. So there are a lot of ways to get there. And, it's my hope that a lot of what Rich and I are talking about today will be totally obsolete in 6 months. And I think it's quite possible in certain cities or states that may be the case, right? I mean, right now, there are venues that have very few rules, and they're accepting floor plans that look very much like they did, a year ago or a year and a month ago, I guess.
Right.
So, Rich, let's talk a little bit about certain changes on the show floor. So, what happens or what can happen? And again, we've got a lot of contractors on here that are very in tune with this, but if someone suddenly wants to make all their horizontal aisles 15 feet wide, what's the downside of that?
Well, of course, now you're looking at, alignment to all of your utilities and things start to change dramatically where columns are ending up and those kinds of things. I think we have a graphic a little bit later on this very thing. And there's all kinds of different types of ways of looking at density levels and how to keep social distancing in play. And I think is that the 28 square foot rule or something like that.
That's the density rule that is in IAE's essential guidelines. Essentially, it's assuming you have 6 feet around you the whole way. That's kind of a general rule right now. Everybody's working with a different application in their facilities, but I think the key is that as you are working with your contractors, if you're a show organizer, you need to look both up and down about the impact of any of the changes that you're making on the show floor, because the last thing you want to do is cost yourself or your exhibitors additional money in the process. You don't want to have aisles, as Rich said, that get you off the floor port grid where the electrical and the other utilities come out of, or put those ports in either booths or aisles. You don't want to have columns in booths. You don't want to get yourself selling island booths under low areas of the ceiling where they can't hang their signs or have poor distribution of rigging points. So as you start to sell your floor plans, if you're a show organizer, please have that ongoing dialogue with your show organizer or with your contractor so that they can help guide you so that you don't make any expensive mistakes.
What are some of the things that your customers are asking you for in terms of layouts? What are you seeing in that regard?
Well, I think first off, I think we're all recognizing that the first year back, we need to look at every area that's on the show floor from a value standpoint, right? I mean, there are a lot of things that we've done because they've worked really well in the past that may not be a good idea right now, either because they are high density or they're high touch, right? So some of the feature areas that have been on the show floor. If you're looking at education on the show floor, obviously the spacing of the chairs is going to be different right now. So you may want to, relook at that, and does it make sense to have it there? And of course, one of the challenges right now is everybody is assuming that there's got to be some sort of a hybrid component, but that adds with it a lot of costs, and how to monetize that, how to integrate it, how to integrate the two audiences is a big part of the discussion that we're having every day.
Yeah, I in terms of, the different layouts that are there, it runs, the first and easiest thing is to look at is the aisle widths and what can be done there to get some space. And then of course, social distancing the booths themselves and putting space in between those booths, is certainly a valid method of being able to do it, and creating more cross aisles. So that only, 2 booths or 3 booths deep, 30 feet runs before there's a cross aisle, again, to get more space to be able to deal with the social distancing aspects. And of course, it's easier for us as an industry to be able to enforce face masks and social distancing as a rule. And of course, there's certain software out there that can enforce this as well, that, hey, you're too close kind of thing. And so there's many different iterations in terms of what's valid. And again, some of these, like you said, you hope they don't exist after this. And one of the things that we're saying internally to our organization is that right now there is permanent change hiding behind what's happening here in COVID. I mean, we're getting serious things because of the disease itself, and it has forced change. Some of that is temporary. Like I said, I want to bail on some of this 6 months from now. Some of it's going to be permanent. And those are the things that, we want to pay attention to on the long term. But, in terms of booth layouts and some of the things that we've seen and one of those is having 8-foot pipe and drape all the way to the aisle, which then brings us into almost absolute conflict with almost every rule that we've had, and that is sight lines, right? Oh my God, you're going to do this. Now, Europe has been doing shell scheme, and they've had I'll call it 8 feet for those of us who are US based and not get into the metric system where people are like, what are you talking about? But anyways, is that, that's norm for them, and it's not norm for us. We have sightline rules, and if you had a 10 by 10, you don't have cubic content of the entire space. But that is a possibility now if a decision's been made to go ahead and do pipe and drape 8 feet out. And so, a lot of the things that we see are going to fall onto the show organizer in terms of enforcement, rather than it being the general service contractor or the venue, simply because it's going to be it's their plan, it's their layout, it's their exhibitors. So, we'll definitely see some changes.
Yeah, it's interesting because certainly the cubic content discussion comes up every few years. In fact, I think just a few years ago, IAEE updated its white paper on cubic content. And it's more common to see cubic content be sold in the US when the show is being produced by a company that is more global and does events around the world or has exhibitors in that show that exhibit around the world. We're still pretty tightly tied to that sightline rule in the US. We like to be able to look down the aisle and see what's ahead. I think the 8-foot side rail is, one of the things that I think will have a shorter lifespan here. I think we're going to make some predictions at the end of this, but yeah, there are a lot of things that are being tested right now that could be long-term changes. Do we want to talk about my favorite topic?
I think we should.
The one that will not be a permanent change?
Exactly.
So don't pull it up yet, Julie, but so one-way aisles do not work. So know that there are a lot of, or at least a few venues right now that are giving guidance to have one-way aisles at the direction of their health departments. And, here's what I will say. Have you been to the grocery store with one-way? And how well does it work there, right? It can work in certain areas of a show floor, or if you have a very linear show where all your aisles go straight front to back and all your cross aisles go straight left to right. But Jewel, if you could pull up that sample that I shared with you where has a lot of islands in it and has been sold across aisles, and not every aisle goes straight through. You can just imagine trying to enforce your traffic flow on a show like this. And this is not an unusual show. This yes, there are maybe a few fewer front to back, aisles that go the whole way through. And this is actually only a section of a floor plan. But I just wanted to show this, and thanks, Julie, that's great. To give you an idea, just a visual of what happens when you start selling islands, peninsulas, breaking up your aisles a little bit. And you can only imagine the number of individuals it would take on a show floor like that to police it. And so that's...
Hey, can you guys charge by the sticker?
Maybe one-way aisles, right?
You charge by the floor sticker. That would do it.
Oh yeah, well, imagine the graphics that go with it, right? I mean, can you even imagine the
sponsorship?
Yeah. So that's something I'm hoping is going to go away rapidly, because while I understand the concept, and I think when it comes down to it, has to do with egress. You're not trying to get everybody passing in and out of the same areas at the same time, because then people tend to be too close together. And I think one-way aisles is something that comes out of that. Julie was actually telling me a story today about her local grocery store that had the aisles going one way, and they didn't have enough aisles. So when you ended up in the back, and you still had to get to the front. There was no aisle to loop back on, so you were stuck in a dead end in the back. So I'm certainly hoping one-way aisles go away. And however, if that's what's required right now by the venue and by the health department to get an approval, then obviously we all need to find a way to make it work, at least in the short term.
Yeah, there's no doubt, and that little graphic that you showed, that was brought to you by automated software that allows you to
sponsor of our session today.
Yeah, that's right. Because otherwise, I mean, you go crazy looking at that. So the system looks at each aisle, and it knows to switch, and you can pop one and then it switches the other, and it does all kinds of crazy stuff for this. But I think one of the things that with this is that I believe that it is going to be important to submit your plans with one-way aisles. I don't especially for the powers that be, for those who are approving the floor plan, they're going to like looking at that. I think that it's going to be one of the things that will help approvals of the show. And you know, it's just like the grocery store. I mean, you know, how many people it's like, or have you been ever caught going the wrong way at the grocery store? And I have. It's like, oh crap! Oh shoot! I'm the wrong way.
I'm
So
back down the aisle with my cart. My cart was still going in the right
no,
direction.
it's not me. It's not me. Yeah, but I really think it's going to be one of those things, and then again, it's going to be up to the organizer to enforce that. And I think that, you know, you put some stickers on the floor and you do it. And I don't know whether or not it's going to be, someone's going to be standing there and handing out fines because people are going the wrong way.
Well, I hope by the time most of these shows that are produced that were approved with those one-way aisles on the floor plans don't have to have one-way aisles on the floor plan anymore. So that's
Yeah.
you know, that's this right now. So Rich, you touched a little bit on what's going to go on, you know, within some of the exhibitor booths themselves, and how exhibitors are looking at their space. And I think that, you know, at least in the short term, obviously a lot of exhibitors are in the same boat as we all are, and they have smaller budgets, and they're trying to drive a safer experience within their own booths. So you know, there are a lot of tips on what exhibitors can do in their own space, whether it's, and I think some of our friends from Court are on the call. It's, you know, selecting furniture that is easy to clean, selecting, you know, maybe having a reception desk at the front if you're a large enough booth, even designing a path through the booth. Obviously, lower touch experiences,
Yes.
instead of printed matter, you know, et cetera. Any other tips from your end on the exhibit?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think that, you know, there is some opportunity hidden in this again. There's in this particular case, especially for the general service contractor, to offer packages to exhibitors that do help in that process, so that even little guys, you know, in 10 by 10s, or the big guys that have now downsized, to be able to provide them, rather than their exhibit houses, you know, some sort of turnkey show up, graphics, and what have you. I've done this overseas and done it with other, you know, shell scheme based exhibiting, where the contractor provides everything. I show up with a laptop and plug in. And I think that this is an opportunity for that type of sale to come and play. It also, you know, what we've seen, like for instance in Orlando, is that, you know, some of the right now, and again, I'm hoping this changes quickly. Right now, the large corporations a lot of them have travel bans in place. So it's giving the smaller exhibitor, the one that's more nimble and can make decisions easier, an equal footing at these events. And so they're going to need some help in marketing. So again, I believe that this is a real opportunity for the general service contractor to step up and say, hey, look, let us help you take advantage of this particular situation that is going to be rare. It's going to change. But right now we've got some things that will help you, you know, attract that attendee.
Well, and I think this all goes back to what I'd mentioned before about having good data and really current data, because the sentiments about that you might have gotten a month ago even may have changed just because of the pace of vaccines. A lot of it is very dependent upon the profile of the attendee and the exhibitor, right? Both personally and professionally. Asking someone if they want to come to your show is not the same as asking them if they can get funding from their company and whether or not their company will back them, you know, or whether they have a travel policy. Same with, you know, what exhibitors plan to do this year. over the course of the last year, when there were where there were very few exhibitions, exhibitors were exploring other channels in marketing, right? They were reaching out to their customers in different ways. So some of those budgets got diverted. And a question I think we all have right now is how much of that budget is going to come back to exhibitions and how quickly. And if exhibitors are designing their spaces to be more open from a safety standpoint, they're bringing in less exhibitry, they're maybe renting less furniture, whatever, you know, that's going to have an impact on all of us from a budget standpoint. So having really, really good data around those decisions. And again, looking at every one of those areas on the, you know, the show floor, whether it's your feature areas, you know, how does your registration feed into the exhibit area? And one thing we haven't talked about yet is food service. That's a kind of a big work in progress for a lot of people right now. In most cases, in the rules that I have seen so far, they want any food to be consumed in a designated area, because obviously if you're snacking or noshing as you move around the show floor, you're having to take your mask off to do it. So, and then of course, you know, how food will be served is going to be different, at least in the short term. Right, Rich?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, whether it be prepackaged or at the hotels I've been staying at that, you know, serve a breakfast in the morning, is that now the staff it's not a self-serve. The staff is serving. So it's more labor intensive, you know, for them. And obviously I think we'll see that same thing at centers as well, where, you know, it's either only going to be prepackaged or it's going to be served by someone. You know, what about pass around hors d'oeuvres at an opening or whatever? I don't see that happening unless it is, again, it's packaged somehow, so that it's a single serving, whatever it is, you know, whether it's, you know, the whole roll of Thin Mints from the Girl Scouts or what, you know.
It's that time of the year.
It is.
Well, and I think that this also brings to mind, how do we reinvent for our current environment and still be sustainable, right? Because, you know, we were all going very well down that path of turning what has not traditionally been a very green industry into one that was way more aware and working very hard at sustainable goals. And now if we're looking at things like additional graphics for safety purposes, if we're doing a lot of, you know, individual packaging, it's how can we you know, work towards those sustainability goals. And I think that's one of the things that we all have to collaborate on and you know, keep front of mind, because we don't want to lose ground on those very important initiatives.
Yeah, and we certainly are going to see a slight step back on that. I think personally, everyone on this call who's been getting their groceries delivered or you know, won't go to a restaurant.
Amazon package every day.
Oh my gosh, yes. It just happened, actually. It's like Christmas
sure
every day. Yeah. You know, take this thing away from me, will you? Yeah, there's certainly, you know, something to be said for that, you know, this is when you're looking at prepackaged goods, when it comes like food, for instance, that certainly is a thing that will be, you know, a huge change. And then, you know, one of the other things I think that, you know, is the registration areas where, you know, what are we going to, what are we going to do with that?
Yeah, so I see immediately some big changes in registration, because certainly some of the shows that we've already worked on, the show organizers worked very hard to have lower touch registration areas, either by going to digital badging entirely, or by pre-mailing badges, or allowing attendees to print badges at home. A lot of ways to try and keep the lines at registration down. Is that, you know, the trend that you're seeing, Rich?
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it's pretty funny. In fact, a shameless plug here, by the way, I'm the chair for the technology committee for SEER, which oversees all the questions and the types of responses. So back quickly to Julie's thing about data, please follow SEER. They're staying up to date on this, and there's some really good information on that. So that's a shameless plug. Sorry about that. We haven't done the ESCA board plug yet, but anyways, but yeah, one of the things that has been in discussion is from the exhibitor side of digital badging. So if you are walking up to a kiosk and getting scanned in, and your badge, there's no printing, there's no, and there's no badge, how do you handle that? And exhibitors are absolutely adamant that that's a bad thing. You have to figure out a way of dealing with having some sort of badge and printing, because there's just simply, it's extremely difficult to have people in your booth and you don't know who they are, and until you ask. And so it's that trend, I hope, is very short-lived, because as an exhibitor as well as a vendor or specialty contractor, if you will, to this industry, we certainly want to be able to tell who's walking down the aisle and who is that person and who are we talking to. Also, the queue lineup that is built in. That was one of the things that was brought up by our general service contractors when we had these summits, was managing the queues and what those queues would look like. And so we again created software for queue management and being able to do and set up the social distancing and the back and forth, if it's going to be back and forth. And generally, that's not how you want to do it in this case, because you don't want people doing that. So there are different types of setups that for the registration counters, how they're laid out, how you can basically, I don't, does laminar flow, is that too technical? Essentially kind of one-way things that are apart from each other, and being able to keep people from crossing each other's path. So reg is going to be a whole thing, and I think that again, it's going to be a changing dynamic, as well as technology changes and as this whole, eventually, hopefully we can get rid of this whole thing.
Well, I think what's key in what you just talked about is that showing more detail on floor plans is going to be really critical in at least the short term. You're not going to be able to just put your reg counters on. You're going to need to show how the traffic is going to flow in reg. You're not going to just be able to put a square for a networking area. You're probably going to need to show what structures are in there, where do you enter, where do you exit. We were just working on a floor plan for a client that had a lot of big circular areas on it, and couldn't get preliminary approval from the fire marshal until we showed how traffic flow would go through those areas. And I think that's going to be really key. And it's never a bad policy. I've always said show as much as you can as far as structures on a floor plan anyway, because you never want the fire inspector to show up and say, I wasn't aware that was going to be there, and you've made a costly mistake. But the other reason it's really great to have that level of detail on your floor plan is when it comes to show site and to getting things installed correctly, that's the perfect attachment to all of your work orders, right? A visual picture of exactly the way, the queue line should run, where the rope and stanchion should be, exactly, how the counter should be spaced, et cetera. And it helps every other level of worker in the building, whether it's, the facility installing the electrical for registration, for instance. They can be, to scale where to drop things. So I think that's maybe a habit that should stay, a habit that should stick. So.
Yeah, no, we have a new release for the show organizer that actually has a drag and drop tool for that very purpose. We think that the level of detail that's going to need to be conveyed is going to be critical. because we're not dealing with a cohesive federally mandated, so you don't know from one city to the next what's going to go. So just as you said, Julie, I couldn't agree with you more that as much detail as you can provide is another step towards approval of a floor plan and an event for any given jurisdiction, because you're going to be dealing with multiple personalities that are different at every turn of the corner. And as you had mentioned, what was valid last month might not be valid today, and heck, I can even take that, even what was valid yesterday might not be valid today, and because it changes dramatically. So, it's just as simple, like, for instance, yesterday, Minnesota reported that they've had 85 or around mid 80s of people who have been infected with COVID that have gotten their vaccine. About our events to make sure or ensure that they get approved, to get stamped, and get so that we can get the rubber to the road here. Because again, as an industry, as our industry is far more controlled than anything at a grocery store or at retail outlet that have remained open.
Well, and I think it's key to just, again, have that communication between all the parties involved, because one thing you don't want to do in a time when we're all trying to watch our budgets and when many of us are shorter staffed, at least in the short term, is have to do revision after revision after revision. It also generally costs money to have a fire inspector look at a floor plan more than once. And sometimes they aren't even willing to. Sometimes it's, we'll look at it when you're ready, when you're done, but we don't want to give you a preliminary approval. So having that kind of that dialogue with the venue, the contractor, whoever is representing, and again, typically right now, the venue is kind of the keeper of all the rules and information that are coming from the different entities. So having that ongoing dialogue, and sometimes you can ask someone, your customer service person within or contact within the venue to take a preliminary look at your floor plan and see if there's something that they are concerned about, so that you don't, get the whole way down the road selling your space and have to make a significant change. And that's going to be a real challenge in the coming months, because, again, if you're selling a show for October, November, you're probably taking, you might be taking some risks or making some assumptions that you wouldn't be if your show were being held in July. So.
Absolutely. And again, I think, with the resizing of events is definitely, it's a reality as we come through this to the other side. And there are going to be those accountants who are going to be watching every penny that's being spent on, no matter who you are in this equation. So it's going to be important to watch that. And one of the things that I believe that we'll see is that, we might see, to move on to another topic that's important here, kind of touched on in the beginning, is that when you set up a show off grid, for instance, now your aisles might have electrical equipment in it, or cords or cables that need to run in an aisle. Now you've got a trip hazard. So especially depending on what you have for aisle carpet. How did I do that for a segue? Was that
good? So I have some predictions that maybe we can get Julie to bring up, and then maybe you and I can do, kind of a little back and forth about some of these predictions that I'm making in regards. If we can get just slide number.
There you go. Nice.
So these are some things that I think are gone probably for the long term, at least in some capacity. So physical bookstores on the show floor were already starting to be reinvented, right? To where there might just be a sample and you ordered the book and it was shipped to you, right? Right now, I don't think you want to invite people into your association booth to flip what have a lot of people flipping through books, right? So what What do you think, Rich? Do you think physical stores will come back?
I would say over time, there will be, maybe a recurrence, but certainly not as hot and heavy as it's been. But I would hope as we get a handle on this and its variants, that this just becomes another flu shot every year, that, yeah, we can end it.
So I think that these were already on the way out. I think books are going to be sold more through e-commerce. I think certainly with some shows with global attendance, attendees actually want to pick something up and take it with them. So I think there'll be a very moderate resurgence on certain events, but I think the days of shipping boxes and boxes and boxes of books to show site are probably gone.
I need my show T-shirt though. I mean,
Well, that's a whole nother question, right? Printed literature.
Yeah, I mean, ouch. I think that really what we'll probably end up seeing is QR code based literature stands, if you will. That is easy to do with today's technology, and simply just relating a QR code to some literature. And it actually moves that needle that you're talking about earlier about being green. And I could see that's a forever change.
Right.
You're not killing trees. But by the way, one of our associations happens to be in the tree business that uses our software. So you always get these emails that says, please
order the literature to be mailed to them after the event through that.
There you go. And it'll have to be mailed later. But the point being is that, how many emails have you received? Well, please consider the environment before you print this. And by the way, their signature line is, paper is a renewable resource. Please feel free to print. So,
exactly. All right. So how about handshakes? And, we're in a very huggy industry, and I know, but I kind of feel like I'm going to have a little PTSD after this. What do you think?
No, I think it's that whole thing is going to change. I think that's going to be a global change. I believe that we're going to see a different way of saying hello, and it's going to be hard to break, but it's definitely something that I think is on its way out.
How about high touch features?
Oh, I can't wait to touch things after someone else just did it.
Yeah, so touch screens I think will be back, but just not in a bit, right? So I think, yeah, there you go. We talked a little bit about self-serve buffets, water pitchers, candy, dishes.
Yeah.
At least in the short term, we're going to find another way to share those items, right? No. Oh, no more donut walls.
Oh, no. I love donut walls.
I'm afraid unless you have someone there wearing a glove to hand you the donut you have selected.
Right, and it is covered in saran wrap, right? Or all the donuts are individually wrapped. I guess you could still do it. You could still do it. Yeah,
Jules,
absolutely.
How about the next slide, Jules? Yeah, so these are the things that I personally think and hope are going to have short lifespans. One is the 8-foot side rails that we discussed. Again, unless you're making a conscious decision to go to selling cubic content and going to a more space booths we didn't really talk about on a lot of floor plans right now. There are spaces being built in between booths and the way they're laid out. Again, obviously that can create cost problems. It can create, you've obviously lost saleable space, et cetera. So I think this is a short-term nod to the fact that people need to feel comfortable being in their space, and hopefully when we're all more comfortable, that will go away. You don't need to hear me again on one-way aisles. You know my position on one-way aisles. Elimination of aisle carpet. You started to make the segue to that. So here's what I will say. If you are eliminating carpet because it's a one-time budget decision, that's one thing. If you are eliminating it because you think it's cleaner to have a bare floor, that's a fallacy. And the carpet is at least as easy to sanitize and clean, if not more so, than bare floor. And people like to walk on carpet. So.
And it helps eliminate trip hazards and slip hazards.
And again,
so,
like Rich said, if you have any, thing that need any utilities or anything that have to go across aisles. You want to do a bridge, and you can make it a little more easier to take with carpet. So.
Absolutely. And, you know, and one of the things about, I have been traveling as of late, you know, you're seeing, you know, where they're spraying areas with, you know, with a mist, sanitizing mist, and much easier to hold that in a carpet than it is on a bare floor. And now you're dealing with something that's slippery. Where on a carpet it is not, and that is completely sanitized. They have the sanitation stuff, I think, has lifespans of at least 24 hours or more. You know, so it's definitely something that makes sense to have. And I think there's been a lot of good arguments being made for keeping aisle carpet.
Absolutely. All right, and then last but not least, some things that I think have some staying power. I think some aspect of digital registration, again, you know, Rich will tell you he doesn't love a digital badge, so maybe it's full registration with a way to print the badge. Contactless exhibitor services, certainly I think has been very well received by exhibitors, and I think that is here to stay. Thank you for your whiz badge there. Value engineering, and by that I mean, you know, this is a great time to blow everything up. You know, pardon the expression, but a great time to look at everything fresh and decide who is it really providing value for, and that should be data driven. So, you know, have we done something because we've always done it that way, or, you know, have times changed, and do we need to relook at the area and reinvent it, redesign it? And, you know, we've never had an opportunity to have this kind of time to rethink things, right? Certainly, I think hand sanitizers and enhanced cleaning are here to stay. I think you know, fool me once with the pandemic, you know, shame on you, but fool me twice. I think we all now realize that there are super bugs like this or things that can spread. And I think we're all going to have a focus on enhanced cleaning and wiping things down and et cetera in the future. Features that integrate virtual attendees, you know, we talked a little bit about that. And then one of the trends that was, and Rich, I know you can talk about this because you've started to have to expand your floor plans to include the outside of facilities, et cetera. And I think there was a real focus over the past 4 or 5 years to go to more of a campus approach. You know, not just looking at the hall as your space, but the area around it and engaging people in activities in that area. I think hybrid is kind of going to be an extension of that. So it's going to be a part of the broader campus. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, there's no doubt. I think it's going to be here to stay. I think that it is a low enough cost insurance program to be able to have that in place and just flip and in case something actually happens. Because we have no idea what the future holds. So having that in your back pocket is going to be key.
Yeah, and you know, we all know there's a lot of debate over the value of the virtual exhibition piece that's going to continue. You know, the ROI that exhibitors do or do not get from that virtual piece. Certainly, it's a great way to share content. It's a great way to reach audiences that have not attended your show before. Whether it becomes permanent for every event, or you know, whether they can afford for it to be permanent is going to be a real question. And then I mentioned again, having, you know, making data-driven decisions and having really fresh data. I mean, in the past, you probably could, you know, survey your attendees or your exhibitors once a year, once every 2 years, and that was plenty. But now things are changing so rapidly. I think you're going to have to do far more surveys on a regular basis until things even out a little bit again. I don't think the shorter decision-making cycles are going away anytime soon, certainly not this year. Everybody's, no. We're going to have to be flexible, all of us. And then I mentioned that enhanced competition for exhibitor spend, you know, with the omni-channel opportunities out there. So
that is exactly right. Omni-channel is the right word for that. And the shorter decision-making cycles, what we're seeing is in fact, just spoke with an organizer yesterday, where the exhibitors are withholding payment. They've contracted for the space. They haven't paid for it. And they're 2 weeks out from their event. They still haven't paid for it. And he, you know, as this particular organizer said, I know they're going to write me the check, but they're not writing it until the day before that show opens, or they're handing me the check as they set up, because they don't want me to hold their money in case it gets canceled.
Well, and that makes this whole planning thing really difficult, doesn't it? Because we have some clients that have had some similar situations where the final payment date came due, and that's, you know, and up till that point, they were very confident of their show being a certain size. Now, granted, it was much earlier in the year when I think, you know, there was, you know, a higher, you know, risk reward ratio there, but yeah, I think that the shorter cycles are definitely going to be an issue. So, Jewel, do you have some questions for us out there?
How are we doing on time? Oh,
I do. There's quite a few questions here, actually. And oops, sorry. If anybody wants to jump in and raise your hand and ask the question themselves, that's fine. But just real quick, Rich, can you explain to us what the European model is for those who don't know?
Well, European model is basically it's intact. They already have 8-foot walls, if you will, for social distancing. So you're not breathing someone else's air. So we have not seen much change except possibly wider aisles. But otherwise, for the most part, because the shell scheme type layouts, that the footprints have remained very close to, very similar to what we saw pre-COVID. Yeah, so it's not much change.
All right.
Yep.
And then Stephen Hacker is wondering, you know, that extending space between the booths might work well for smaller, medium-sized shows, but what about mega shows when they exhaust all available floor space? Do you see that even being an issue in the immediate future?
Well, I think obviously, you know, Stephen, we're hoping some mega shows are actually mega shows to start with. And I would say in general, what I am seeing is the large shows that are selling space for, you know, fall shows are not including any additional spacing unless they've added a few aisles. But right now they are counting on the fact that they're going to be able to manage the density, or that the density rules are going to relax.
Yep.
Okay.
Agreed.
Kristen LeBrun wants to know, what would you suggest that exhibitors use for gifts and handouts? Is it virtual? Is it in advance? How are they going to handle that?
Yeah, that's a really good question in terms of giveaways. Again, they are going to have to be prepackaged somehow. They have to be wrapped up, whatever they are. We had some fun with this, as well as doing a virtual contest. And we were giving at Expo, you had a chance to win $100,000 at our booth. It's not that expensive. Organizers can make money on this, and so can contractors. So yeah, I would say, and then it's an opportunity for folks to come up and be creative on giveaways. So anything prepackaged, things that are virtual. Like I said, we think of what we did virtually was kind of like a lottery scratch-off ticket.
Right. And
but it was on your cell phone.
An e-Starbucks card or something for a certain level of engagement, or
yeah, sure.
And I think, you know, let's face it, there are different types of attendees. There are attendees that you're having, you know, some sort of significant engagement with, and then there's the, you know, the grab and run, you know, and if you have, you know, whether it was a snack or a giveaway on your counter just because you think that's going to have X number of additional people come by your booth, those weren't quality engagements anyway.
No, true enough. And we did have one exhibitor give away Santa-tizers in December. Little bottles of hand sanitizer called Santa-tizers.
That's great. Michael Lynn, I see you in the audience and you have a couple comments here, and I'm wondering if you want to ask those yourself. So I'm going to click and allow Michael to talk here. I'm not sure if he's on. I hate to put him on the spot. I didn't ask him in advance.
Oh, sure.
So I know, right? Nothing like being on the spot, but he's got some really good questions here. So Michael, if you're there, you just need to unmute and let me know when. Oh, there he is. There you go, Michael.
He's there. Hey, Michael.
Hey, how you doing today, Rich? I haven't seen you in a while.
It is. It's been a while. Absolutely. Good to hear your voice.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I saw Julie too. We used to be on several boards together. Now, Julie, did you want to read what I sent in, or do you want me to just talk
No,
about it?
I mean, I'm happy to, but you're also,
Okay, wow. Let's see, you said, I've been talking with a lot of companies and they've stated that they will no longer support shows, events, et cetera, or send staff to areas that have had problems. Seattle, Portland, New York, Austin, Dallas, Chicago, most of California are where they're sending illegals to be housed, again, Dallas, et cetera. A lot of what I call the blue states are going to take a hit. What are you hearing or seeing? I have to tell you, I have heard nothing along these lines, and I certainly hope that companies aren't making business decisions based on personal political agendas like this. I know it happens some. I certainly hope that this is a, maybe a short-term reaction to what has been a highly charged emotional political year, and that when some of this all settles down, that they're making business decisions about shows that they want to go to because it's good for their company. Not, really, does the state of California know that that individual is, company is not supporting them for that reason? Probably not. Yeah, that's kind of scary, but I had not heard that. Anybody?
Me neither. No, I haven't heard that, but that's a good answer.
Yeah, maybe you're just venting right now, I hope, and that when it comes down, support the shows that make business sense for their organization.
I've seen where some have started internationally now to where they're doing a very small exhibit space or a conference room at the show instead of sending a lot of staff and everything. And they're actually using like in-country people, or only using consultants or whatever. And they're using them to set up a Zoom call with business people in other sectors of the company that want to talk business. But at the same time, then they came out and says, hey, look, I've talked to one group that does over 350 shows a year, and now they've canceled down to 80. And they've already started saying, one of the key ones that I really heard come out was they're really restricting people going to Chicago. And that's because of all the gun violence and stuff that they see that's happening there. They just don't want their employees there.
I hate to say it, I hope it's just a particular mix of business that you're dealing with, Michael, because I certainly hope that that kind of thing does not long-term impact what is a very vital industry. I think there's no question that because of different budget cycles and again, the level of risk organizations are willing to take right now is fairly low, that there's going to be a period of time where certain industries are impacted pretty dramatically. But on the other hand, I have clients whose attendees and exhibitors would take their masks off today and go into an exhibit hall that, was at the same level of audience that it's always been in. So it's really knowing that persona and, what risk they're willing to take and planning accordingly.
Yeah.
That's sobering.
I'm on the board of another association that actually planned an event for Portland. So it's very apropos that you bring this up. And certainly it's a consideration of issues for having this meeting upcoming. Of course, then COVID came in and messed things up, but we were already having discussions because of the civil unrest. But what came into play is the CVB, the city came in to help with the rescue of the meeting, and so to move it forward. And now I'm going to joke with that. That's because it happens to be that Portland, Oregon is really close to the wine growing region in Portland, and they make the best Pinot Noirs on the planet. So we just enticed everyone with really great wine. But the thing about it is that the cities can get involved and help organizers be able to move forward their events if that type of apprehension is starting to rear its head within a meeting. Absolutely, that is a concern.
And your second point here, though, Michael, is very valid. Is you talk about opportunities that come out of change like this, and this has created at least a short-term business model where there are some organizations or small companies that are starting up to be more highly trained local representatives that can work in booths for companies that cannot send their teams in from other countries right now. So, that's a good solution right now is, some sort of a turnkey package, and you train a local representative to represent you. And again, this is where technology helps. You set up a live call and have that interaction, and you don't have to sit out an event entirely. So I think show organizers being aware of that and maybe trying to be some matchmakers with some of those opportunities is a good idea.
And I think it's a great opportunity for EACs as well to step up in this time. I think there's opportunity is just, is effervescent everywhere within, again, it's under the veil of COVID, but there's definite change, and some of this change is going to be the better. And it's masking. There's a lot of masks over not only our faces, but there's masks over opportunity that need to be discovered, and it's all there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm optimistic, in other words.
Michael, did they address your question, or do you want anything else you want to add to that?
Oh, no, I was just trying to get some key points from outsiders that I trust their opinion on, because I hear so much from other companies and all when I talk to them of what they're trying to do.
Wow, very interesting.
That's great. Thanks.
Good to know. Good to hear from you.
Hey, Rich, one quick question though is, are you incorporating any new features into your security program to do along with the COVID?
Actually, I have been looking at that and where it would fit best. Because again, we have to be careful with HIPAA. So we're looking at that very thing on our new security tool. Yes.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, Michael.
Yeah. Good to talk to you.
All right. We got a couple questions from Michael. I'm going to say your name wrong. Ozoski. I think I said it
Michael Osaski, Ososky.
So Michael, I don't know if you want to add the more questions, comments, so I'm putting you in, but I'm not sure if he wants to, again, I'm putting him on the spot here. So the couple comments he had here were bring back the 6-foot concrete gutters on the aisle carpet to reduce cost.
Yep, that's one of the things that is built in.
Right, not having to go wall to wall. I mean, that's,
Yep.
That's certainly a good solution.
And then 20-foot, he says 20-foot aisles stay on the grid and they can be bi-directional roads, travel on the right side only. Thoughts?
Yeah.
You can make people follow those rules.
That's right. Yeah, you put, you can do like the McDonald's events where they make it look like a road and then put 2 stripes down the middle.
Yeah.
So then Lita Roberts joined a little bit late, but Alita, we did not actually touch on this question. Her question revolves around security and how they're going to handle large shows where they were responsible for making sure that badges of folks coming in are not counterfeit, with new measures needed. Will there be new measures needed to be thought out for this type of closeness? Also, for larger shows that already use a lot of space outside to stage folks, how are they supposed to handle that?
Yeah, so first off, hi, Lita. I think that by the time we have that type of crowd, we're going to all be looking at this a little bit differently from the standpoint of who's going to be deciding, whether a badge is counterfeit or not. That type of thing is always going to fall back on the show organizer. I don't think that any fire marshal is saying who you can let in their building or any venue or any health department. They're just saying how many. So how you manage the traffic and how you decide who gets badged, I think is going to continue to fall on the show organizer.
Yeah, I think also to expand on that, Julie, is that one of the things or conversations that we had, Michael Lynn is big on this, is on the security side, is that, if we expand our conversation and we go beyond COVID and we start looking back at bad people doing bad things, where that then falls into security of badging and what have you. One of the things that we're all dealing with right now is 2-level authentication, where we come in, we type in our email address, and then the next thing you know, it asks you for a code on your phone, right? And that's what I think, because of, I think just intrinsically built into the where we're heading just with COVID is going to actually expand the level of security for the event as a whole, because you're only going to be able to get in a badge when you're holding your phone, getting it scanned. Where before we could do the tricky business card thing or do whatever, walk up to Reg and do an on-site registration, without any type of validation. And so I think we're going to, I think this type of essentially two-level authentication is definitely part of it. And then also in terms of large crowds, that was actually in the ExpoCad contractor software for COVID. Those types of queues and building, all the bicycle, what do they call that? Bicycle and stanchions and what have you. All that stuff's there too. Yeah. Bicycle racking, is that what they call it? Okay, yeah, so that stuff.
All right, so the next one are food shows. I think we're gonna see a fundamental revamp, right?
Well, again, I think we're hoping that some of this is short term. Right now, what we're hearing from facilities is that if there are samples, there's going to have to be a sampling area, and people are going to have to collect samples, sit down and eat them, and then move on. Again, grazing right now, when you need masks is not okay. Once mask rules relax, might it be possible again to do some grazing? Yes, but will the rules about whether the food needs to be prepackaged or not? I think that's going to be a question for every different venue.
And jurisdiction.
And I think that's going to be a work in progress.
Yeah, I think every food show is going to have to go to Pack Expo to get some automated machine to wrap it up into little things,
Shameless plug.
But yeah, I think exactly right. I think the samples will be served in a singular location, or you collect them so you can eat them in a spot. Yeah, absolutely.
Or you literally have a lineup of samples, and then you take them and you sit them down. You take off your mask, you eat them, and go back and collect more. It's not ideal right now, but I think there's just with mask rules, there's not any real alternative right now until things get relaxed.
Oh, and you said it, once they're relaxed, maybe we can go back to a bit of normalcy there, and hopefully, this is one of those things that doesn't stay. So tying into, I want to thank you, Rich, for your sponsorship today. Please know, I asked Rich to be a speaker before we went begging for money.
That's true. That's true.
In other words,
Can you hear my dogs are done with me being on Zoom calls. The last question came from Kim Vasquez here, and she wanted to know, Rich, is there somebody out there that can help? And this ties to the sponsorship there. It's perfect timing. For a tutorial on the new add-on stanchions, one-way aisles, drag and drops, etc.
Absolutely. Just drop an email to luv@expocad.com, and we'd be more than happy to help you. Mike and his team. That's that weird name that last name you couldn't pronounce. He is, by the way, a futurist and been teaching futurism for 22 years, so he's way plugged in. But anyways, just drop us a line and we'd be more than happy to help you out.
Perfect. So with that, if there's no other questions from our attendees, I really want to thank both of you for this. This was incredibly informative, very timely, and Julie, I hope that your predictions come true and that this is not the way of the future, but just the way of the immediate future. So thank you both for your knowledge, your time, and for your contribution to ESCO and all of our partners out there in the industry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you for having us.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. It's good seeing everybody.
Yep.